Be confident, be bold, be authentic, but don't forget to take action. This is Ordinary to Badass, where our stories empower women to step into the spotlight of their own lives and pursue what they're truly passionate about. It's time to step into the arena and become more than just extraordinary. It's time to become a badass with your host, Marie Sonneman.
Welcome to Ordinary to Badass, episode number 86. In this episode, you will hear from Carolyn Edge. Carolyn has a business where she teaches crafts on the edgier side. We talk about living in a restrictive environment and how you deal with that, or living in a restrictive environment growing up and how you deal with that. Paper quilling. If you don't know what form of art that is, stay tuned because it's very interesting. And also just self-talk. I know that you're absolutely going to love this episode, so stay tuned. But first, a couple of housekeeping things here that I would love to talk about. Have you joined the Ordinary to Badass Facebook group yet? It's a group of badass women just like you. We're all striving just to be more confident and also to have a badass girl gang that has your back. How cool is that? Sometimes we think that we're going through life alone and it can be frustrating. It can be hard. So when you have a group of people, specifically a group of women that are there and have your back, it's powerful and can push you to do things that you never thought you can do. Also, we go a little bit deeper on the episodes and the stuff that we talk about in the episodes. So I would love to have you in the Ordinary to Badass Facebook group. So join today. Also, have you left a review on iTunes yet? Listen, I know you're busy. We all have so much going on and I 100% get that. But I would be super grateful if you headed on over to iTunes and left a 5-star review. Just sharing your thoughts about the episode. That's important so that we can find other badasses just like you so they can find the episode or the show. Or if you don't want to leave a review, I would be grateful if you just sent something to your friend and said, hey, this is something I thought you would enjoy. But yeah, if you do leave a review, definitely hit me up on Instagram with a screenshot at Ordinary to Badass. I would be super, super grateful. All right. Now, let's get to this episode. Welcome to Ordinary to Badass. Whether you're ordinary or badass, I'm glad you're here. Today's guest is Carolyn Edge. Carolyn, thank you so much. Super excited to have you on the show.
Thank you, Maria. I'm so excited to be here.
So before we go any further, I have got to ask you, do you consider yourself ordinary or badass?
Well, I think I'm badass. But I also think I'm a little bit of both. I think in some ways I'm an ordinary person living a badass life or making badass choices. I think we all have a little bit of both in us, right? Like the superheroes we connect with are the ones who are like the average Joe who, like, I don't know, Peter Parker gets bitten by a spider and now, he's doing all these badass stuff. So we relate to these people who are living an ordinary life, but doing badass things. So I guess I got bit by the badass bug, if you will. So I think I have kind of a foot in both worlds.
Yeah. Do you remember what was the turning point, like when you started to feel like a badass?
I can't really pinpoint a specific moment. The reason that I kind of feel like I am ordinary in a lot of ways is like, in some ways my story is not very, here was the big one thing that I overcame, or like, here's these like incredibly hard circumstances that I overcame. Like I grew up in the suburbs and in just like a pretty ordinary family. And I think part of my badass journey is knowing that I was always meant for something more. I always, like, even growing up, I was like, this can't be the fucking suburbs. Can I cuss? on here?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I was like, I can't, like the suburbs were just so suffocating to me, even as a kid when I didn't even know what like all was out in the world. And so I think like that's been part of my journey is like coming from like a pretty vanilla background where nothing interesting ever did happen, or we were intentionally living in a place that was meant to be like very chill and like not have anything interesting happen to us, and I always kind of wanted something more adventurous than that. So I busted out of that. I traveled a lot. Shortly after college I spent about 4 years traveling, so I think that was part of my badass journey as well. But yeah, I think for me it's not like here was one thing that changed everything as much as like kind of just a slow journey over time.
Yeah. So I've got to ask because I love traveling too. I haven't been to a ton of places, but I do love traveling. Where is your favorite place that you've traveled to?
It's always so hard to answer that. Brazil would probably be at the top of my list, and Italy. The Brazil, like, the beach there is gorgeous. The food's amazing. The people are one of the biggest things that make Brazil so incredible. The people there are just so friendly. Like we made friends wherever we went, and they would bring us around all the local places, and it was just like so easy to just travel and make friends there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, yes, I can't say that I've ever been to either of those places, but it sounds amazing. Did you travel like traditional, like go by plane and stay in hotels, or did you drive a lot? What did you do when you were there?
I did a few different things. So I say it was about 4 years, and it was kind of different trips. And I did go home for a few months here and there and save money and things like that. Um, a few of those trips were backpacking. So with some friends, just from hostel to hostel. And it's like the people that I went with were very different. Like when I traveled around Europe, I was with some very like type A, wanted to plan everything. We had everything booked in advance. And so it was like go, go, go. And then when I traveled South America, that was a more leisurely trip. Like we just booked our in flights and out flights. And then everywhere in between, we were just traveled kind of wherever we wanted on whatever timeline and just booked the next place while we were staying at one place. And then I also spent 2 of those years were living in one place at a time. So I spent about a year living in Reunion Island, which is east of Madagascar.
Oh, cool.
And it's a French governed island. So I was there trying to learn French and somehow ended up there. And it was really cool. But I spent about a year there teaching English, and then about a year living in Uganda working at a children's home. So some of these trips were kind of like we were on the move, and then some of them I was like living in one place for a while.
Okay, there's so much stuff that I want to dive deeper into. But before we do so, how about you tell us a little bit about a little bit about yourself so that we can learn something about you?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, the traveling is not not my whole story. So, currently, I live in Austin, Texas, and I'm a paper quilling artist. And if you haven't heard of paper quilling, that's okay. You're probably in the majority. It's kind of hard to describe. I struggle over these audio mediums like podcasts and Clubhouse. I feel like you have to see my art. So it involves taking long strips of paper and you roll and shape those into a different design. And for my artwork in particular, my business name is called Edge Craft. And that originated because my last name is Edge, and I was just kind of putting some things together. And as I got going, the pieces that people were responding to most were like one that says fuck, and it has like really bright, colorful swirls. And so the more that I started leaning into that and, hearing why people really responded to that, people were like, your art is so edgy. And I'm like, yeah, like all fits in. So it's like I make edgy art. My last name is Edge. And so the more that I've gotten into it, the more that I'm leaning into sort of this edgy bit of it. And for me, what that means, so like here's where it gets kind of funny, I think, is that like, oh, like I'm creating this edgy art, but I've never really felt like a very edgy person. I'm this person from the vanilla suburbs where nothing interesting happens, and you go there intentionally for that. And it's like now I create this edgy art, and like where does that come from? And so for me, like the definition of like edgy it's really about like authenticity. It's about finding your true self and your center, and being aligned with that. And then I express that in my artwork. So the edginess for me is not so much these like, I don't know, external things that some people might think of. I'm like, I don't have any tattoos. I like for a while there, my hair was purple, but that was just because of quarantine, not because I'm so cool. But the edginess for me kind of comes out in like authentic expression is really more what I'm digging into and what I'm putting out into the world with my art.
Okay, but I think that's so funny because you said, "Oh, well, my hair was purple, but it was just because of quarantine, not because I was cool." But isn't that what we always do to ourselves or say to
Uh-huh.
ourselves? Like we kind of, even if it was cool, it's like we minimize our own coolness.
Yeah. That's a good point. I think for me, like what I'm trying to say with that is that I think when we look at people who we would classify as edgy or badass, you know, we look at some kind of external factors, and I feel like a lot of those external factors don't really don't resonate with me. So for me, it's kind of more about the inner stuff that comes out when I define edgy or badass and things like that.
Yes, and I couldn't agree more. Like I totally think it's a confidence game more than it is
Hmm.
like some exterior thing or some object. Like no, it's having the confidence and being who you really are
Hmm.
that really makes you badass. So I love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So paper quilling, tell us about that and how you got into that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of funny because it's the thing that I'm currently obsessed with, and I didn't like seek out. It's not like, you know, people are like, I want to be a musician, so I'm gonna seek into that. It kind of came to me. I have always been creative. I've always been involved in the arts. My background is actually in theater, and I was working for a long time here with a creative arts organization, and we would do arts-based programming with kids, and the purpose for that was social change with youth. So we would come in with like a puppet show that taught like social emotional learning, like conflict resolution and things like that. So like that was really cool. And creativity and art and all of that were always a part of my life. Um, Paper quilling kind of came into my life from a friend who used to do paper quilling. I think that was the first time I'd ever seen it. Was probably in like 2012 or so. And I can kind of remember that date because I had her make something for my niece who was born. And I was just like so fascinated by it. I couldn't really understand how you take paper and you transform it in this way and create this like 3D art with it. It was just fascinating to me. It was just something that was always, I hadn't forgotten about. And then so I've always dabbled in like, I'm one of those people like you name an art form or a craft and it's like I've done it, or like I find a new thing and I'm just obsessed with it. And I saw that my local library, because I'm so cool. My library would do this like monthly craft night, and so I would go there and we made like rubber stamps and made our own soap, and like it was just fun, and it was all free. And then one month the craft was paper quilling, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember my friend who did that. And so I went and like took the class. We made like one little card with a flower on it, and I was like, I'm obsessed. I went home, like ordered all the supplies, and I just like was just like go 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 like all into this craft. And um people like very quickly were saying like you should start selling this. And you know, at the time I was just kind of making stuff for fun or for gifts. And it was like about that same time that I had like one after another increased expense. Like my rent went up, I my car broke down, so I had to get a new car, so there was a new car payment and new car insurance. And like over the course of a few months I had my fixed expenses going up like $400 a month. And I was working for a nonprofit at the time. I didn't have this extra money. So I was like, maybe my paper quilling art can like kind of bridge this gap. So I started to have this idea that maybe I could sell this. And this was like 2017. Um, Long story short, I didn't sell my work for like a couple more years. It wasn't until 2019 that I really started selling it. And it kind of came from a place of like simultaneous burnout at my job and wanting to work for myself and define my own schedule. And I was like, could I dream of a world where I get to sit and create my paper quilling art all day and work for myself and make money from it? And like, it was a long journey. There's more to that story about how kind of that happened. But Basically in 2019, I went part-time at my job and started making that happen. And now it's my full-time focus.
So what was that like going from 2017, where you weren't selling your work, but it sounds
Mm-hmm.
like you still definitely had a passion for it.
Mm-hmm.
But what was that like going from that until the point that you finally decided to sell?
Yeah, so it was a lot of not doing anything and using perfectionism as an excuse. And I think I was really just scared and I wanted to do everything right. As I started to look into what it would be like to sell on Etsy, I was hearing all these things. People were saying, like, you need to have 50 listings in your shop before you really get traction. And first of all, that's a myth. That's not true at all.
Hmm.
And but like people, there's perhaps a little bit of truth to that because the more items you have in your shop, the more time people will spend in your shop. But it was
Yeah.
like I was just like, oh, I have to get 50 items, and each of these take hours, if not, like for new designs, sometimes those take days. And so I was trying to make everything perfect. And then I was also, like I said, I started to get really burnt out at my job. So I kept hoping to try to put time in on the evenings and weekends, but I was coming home from work at like 6:37 in the evening and I had nothing left of myself. I spent the weekends just zoning out and dreading Monday. Like I didn't have any bandwidth to like put fire into this thing. And so and I think that spurred me even more to want to do my own thing. And I went part-time at my job. I kind of took away the parts that had been really draining me, and there were still parts of the job that I really loved. So I said goodbye to the parts I didn't like, and thankfully I was able to keep the parts that I did like, and that was enough to kind of like wean me off for a little bit. And so yeah, I started selling, and the way that I actually made my first sale, you can hear more of this whole story in my podcast episode. It's called "The Fuck That Started It All." Tells the story about that fuck piece that I was talking about. I made this one just for fun one weekend, and I put it in a couple of Facebook groups, and it blew up. I had just like thousands of reactions and people asking to buy it, and I had my Etsy shop, but I didn't have anything in there yet because remember, it all had to be perfect. And
Right.
so, but people were asking to buy. So I was like, well, I need to send them a link. So I just like threw it up there in the shop and I made 3 sales. And so that gave me enough confidence to like keep going forward. But yeah, it took a lot of like, it wasn't until I made the messy action without intending to sell that I actually made my first sales, which is ironic because like all the work that I thought I was doing to set myself up for success was really just stalling me and preventing me from getting there.
Ooh, can you dive into that a little bit? Like all the work that was stalling you and preventing you from getting there?
Yeah, I mean, it's more of what I was saying that like I'm the kind of person that I think there is some value to if you're going to start something new to really try to put in the effort to do it right the first time, because if you don't, you have to go back and like fix a lot of things. But in the grand scheme of things, it's like I would rather put something up. What I ended up doing was just kind of taking pictures, and they weren't the most perfect pictures ever, but they were enough to go up in my shop. And even after that, it wasn't until like a year later or so that I was like, oh shoot, I should really take better pictures. But they were making sales. I would generated probably 20 sales from that item with crappy pictures. So it was things that I was telling myself that like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. So that means I have to know everything there is to know about selling my art online. I have to know everything about SEO. I need to figure out what pricing is going to be. I need to take the best photos ever and have the greatest photo shoot and edit all those photos and get it all up really perfect. And it was people like Kathy Heller, who is one of both of our mentors, who one of her biggest things is like, just do it messy, do C-level work, just get the thing out there. And that has been one of the biggest shifts for me, to just like put something out there, and you can always kind of go back and tweak some things later. C-level work, not F-level work, like put something out that you're proud of at least, but it doesn't have to be perfect. So to just let go of that perfectionism, I think it was really my ego blocking me. It wasn't so much about wanting to actually do the thing perfectly. It was about not wanting to put something out there because like fear of failure, but also fear of success. Like, what if this does blow up and I can't keep up with it? Like all sorts of like fears there that were really behind it all. So once
Yeah.
I was able to move past that, it's been very different.
So I think it always blows my mind. And like, whenever I think of it, like, how can we fear success? Like I
Mm-hmm.
think all of us do, or a lot of us do. Um, and I just always like wonder, like, where does that come from? Or you'd think that success would be the exciting part of it. Like, who wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
want success? But it's like, it's also, yeah, it's terrifying.
It is. And I think it's a legit thing because like for example, when I did my first craft show, it was the like Christmas season of 2019. So this was like 2 months or so after I was like really even starting to sell. And when I did my first craft show, I was up like working 24 hours like for like a week or two before it, just trying to get enough inventory. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough inventory, or like I had no idea how it was going to go. I was like, the what ifs that were going through my mind were like, what if no one buys anything? And then I was also like, what if I sell out in an hour and then I have nothing, and it was somewhere in between,
Yeah.
like neither of my worst fears happened. What do you know? I made a good money at that first one and I didn't sell out. Um, but yeah, it's like, I think that's the fear of failure of like not knowing how to like meet the demand, I think is what was behind it. It's like, what if people actually do want this? And it's so far from my belief system, because if your belief is that like, well, I can't make a living from this, and suddenly you do blow up with success, I think that's kind of the beyond behind the fear that it's like too far of a leap.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's some of what that is.
So when you get fears that pop up now, what do you do?
Well, thankfully, 2020 was a huge personal growth, I think, for a lot of us. For me, one of the biggest things that I dove into last year was a lot of mindset work, learning a lot about how our thoughts create our feelings create our actions create our reality. So if I'm having a thought like, no one's going to buy this thing, well, it's like, then that's going to make me scared. And like, what do I do when I'm scared? Like, well, I'm probably going to like reduce the price or just not put it out there. And then the reality is going to be, yeah, it doesn't sell. Right. Or, and then conversely, if I take that thought and I can identify it and go, this thing is going to sell. And then, I'll feel confident, I'll put it out there, and then it sells like that. So when I have those scared thoughts, we have, I don't know exactly how many thoughts we have a day. There's been research on it, what, like 6,000 thoughts a day or something.
Yeah, a ton.
You can't catch every single one. But one of the biggest things that I've been able to learn for myself is how to catch those thoughts, how to recognize that they're limiting beliefs, and to ask if it's really true, and then to challenge it and to try plugging something else in and really like repeating that to myself as an affirmation until it becomes true for myself. So that's been a lot of the personal work that I've done.
Yeah, I that's one of my big things. It's like, don't believe every thought that you think,
Mm-hmm.
because we often just think it, and because we thought it, it has to be true, but
Mm-hmm.
it's absolutely not true. And we beat ourselves up with those negative self-talk and limiting beliefs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's like, it's crazy what our brains can do. Our brains are so funny. So like, let me give you an example. I I started teaching workshops this past fall. Had a lot of people saying, your work is so cool, I want to learn how to do that. So like, okay, started teaching workshops. And when I started to put my first one out there, I sold 2 tickets. And then I started freaking out, like, what if no one else signs up? And like, it's that awkward, like when you have 2 people, you're like, do I cancel it? I was doing that whole thing.
Yeah.
But really what my brain was doing like was, what if no one comes? And I had 2 people already, but my brain was saying, what if no one comes? And I was doing some personal coaching at the time, and my coach told me to like flip those things around. When you have a what if, flip it. So I was sitting there going, what if no one comes? And I was like, okay, well, let's try this. And I was like, what if it sells out? And so I started like doing affirmations, and I was actually I meditate for like 10 minutes or so every morning. And I started just meditating on that and envisioning the things selling out. And I came out of that meditation to like check my email and see that I had another person sign up like
Oh,
while
awesome.
I was meditating. It's like the universe is like so right there, when you do that. And what's funny is that that one did end up selling out, because once I started going, what if it sells out? I was like, oh, shoot, I don't actually have enough supplies. I was like, I think I'd put like 15 tickets available, and I actually only had enough tools because I was sending out kits at the time. I didn't quite have that many tools, so I had to actually go cap it at a certain number. And I was like, oh gosh, I'm glad I actually did sit down and go, what if it sells out? Because if I had sold more, then I would have been scrambling to get tools in time to send them out. So yeah, stuff like that. It's amazing how the universe just like gives you those things, when you start doing the work.
Yes. Oh, to be yours. You heard it. Flip your thoughts. What if no one comes to what if it sells out? Don't just believe every thought that you tell yourself. I think that that's so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So, Carolyn, what would you say to the woman who is doing her day job but feels called to do something else? However, she just doesn't believe she could do it.
I would say get out and do the thing. You heard from me that like I stayed stuck for 2 to 3 years, just not believing that I could do it. And it wasn't until I put myself out there that I discovered that I could. And, you can go bit by bit. You don't have to quit your job tomorrow with absolutely no market validation or things like that. You do have to validate your ideas, because you may be very called to do something, but it may not actually be a great business idea or something that people really need. So you do have to kind of validate that. So if you can get out there and you can do this thing for one person, and it's basically like the formula is, if you've had this transformation for yourself and you can help one other person have a transformation, you've got validation for the thing, and then you can keep going from there. So yeah, get out there and try. You never know until you actually start taking action. And one thing I say, and I'm not the only one who said this. I feel like I've heard Julia Cameron, and I'm sure Kathy Heller and others say this, but it's like, God willing, like time is going to pass. I think it's Julia Cameron who has like an example in her book that's like The Artist's Way, if you're not familiar. Someone said to someone like, how do you know how old you're going to be when you finally master the piano? And they said like, I'll be just as old as if I didn't play piano. It's like time is going to pass. You're going to be 80 years old, God willing. And either you can make the decision to start doing the thing now, and maybe by the time you're 80, you have some like grand thing that you've built. Or if you don't do it, you're going to be 80 anyway. And time is going to have passed and you'll never have followed your dreams. And wouldn't that be a shame?
Yes. Yes. I love that. I think it's so, so powerful. And yeah, I mean, we're either too young to do something or we're too old to do it, right? Like, it's like we think one way or the other, and it's like, there's no perfect age.
Yeah. Yeah. Age doesn't have anything to do with it. Yeah, there's no too young or too old. It's like, if you're young, you have certain advantages that go with that. And if you're older, you have certain advantages that go with that. And it's just get out there. If you have this fire inside of you to do something, get out there and do that. Don't let that flame just fade away, and let your life pass by.
Yeah. And I kind of wanted to delve into something that you said earlier. You were talking about how it felt suffocating, like when you lived in the suburbs or suburbs. Can you talk about that a little bit and what that felt like?
Yeah. It's so funny because every time I go back, I was literally just there a couple days ago dropping off some things at my parents' house, and I just like am screaming inside. Even like my partner, he shares the same views on the suburbs, and even we'll like drive by a suburb and I'll be like, that looks terrible, and he's like, yeah, that's awful. No offense to anyone who lives in the suburbs. The way that I kind of put it is like, that's someone's dream, that's not my dream. And yeah, it's not just the suburbs, because I think you can live in a stifling environment in a lot of different living circumstances. I think like the stifling thing to me, I think sort of came from like this feeling like, I don't know, the dream of the suburbs, or at least in the way that it was perhaps sold to our parents' generation, was the like, you don't have to go through hardships. You can live in, you know, the suburbs are supposed to be like living easy, that you don't have to deal with like the struggles of like living on farmland, nor are you living in the inner city, dangerous, whatever, where you have to deal with public transportation and I don't know what. And we've got this like cushy life that we built for ourselves. We did it. We won capitalism. And now let's sit around and like, I don't know. So I think for me, it's like, I could just sniff out that that was a lie. And yeah, and part of it, like the stifling parts of it around where I grew up were, a lot of it was rooted in Christianity and some kind of stifling things around expression and kind of what's acceptable, what's the right way. There's a very black and white way to live in the like rules that I grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this can happen anywhere, not necessarily in the suburbs. I think for me, that was just like part of it. And you know, I'll also say that like, I don't hold ill will towards Christianity or any religion, or towards like my parents or any of the people who influenced me growing up, because like I know everyone made the best choices that they could and they used the tools that they had in their toolbox. But some of the tools that I think were not like in my family's toolbox were around how to express yourself in a healthy way and how to handle difficult or negative emotions. There was just not space for that. Like if you were mad or sad or whatever, you were just told to not be. Or it's like my dad was allowed to express anger and kind of no one else in the family was, you know, and things like that. So, and then there were some things with like the religion and stuff like that, that the very strong values that I was raised with were like, you better not drink, you better not smoke, you better not cuss, like all of that kind of stuff. And as I kind of like moved away from that environment, I'm like, these are not like markers of a good character. Like, and maybe maybe those are like your standards, but they're not really mine. And like cussing was like a big thing. So I think that's why a lot of my artwork has cuss words in it, because like what any of the things that we do in our adulthood, I think that are just like results of our unmet childhood needs, right? So you know, for me it was like cussing was the absolute worst thing. And so now I kind of like put that out there in a very big, bold way. But it wasn't just around cussing. It was like, to me, it all kind of fits in bigger to like a bigger umbrella of like expression. Like if you're never allowed to express a difficult or challenging or unpleasant feeling, and you're also never allowed to say cuss words, you just become this like stifled, bottled up human who just shoves it all down.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure we've all experienced that.
Right.
And what happens to that bottle under pressure? You explode, right? So I kind of label it all kind of around toxic positivity, where, you know, you're kind of forced to be happy all the time. And then toxic Christianity, where like, again, putting the word toxic in front of something, it's not saying Christianity is bad or that positivity is bad, but like I've seen firsthand Christianity used in a very toxic way that I think is harmful to myself and to some other people that I watch. So I can kind of look at that and go, well, maybe everything that I taught wasn't exactly true. Kind of like we were talking about before. You can look at your reality, you can ask if it's true, you can decide something different. And so for me, that's been about expression and authentic expression. So that's kind of a lot of what comes out in my art. And sometimes it has cuss words that go along with that. And so that's kind of where all that kind of comes from.
I like the cuss words, so it's good.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's probably the same thing. Like I wasn't able to cuss growing up,
Uh-huh.
so now it's like, if I want to cuss, I'm gonna cuss. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, and it's like I want to say too that I'm not advocating for like teaching children to cuss. Like I'm not saying
Yeah,
that. And
yeah.
I know a lot of people were not allowed to cuss growing up, but like as an adult, it's a little bit different. Like their parents are kind of whatever, more lax with them, or they were just kind of holding back from that when the kids were growing up or whatever. But it hasn't changed at all with my family. Like it's still, I don't know, every time I'm around my parents, they bring up cussing. Like they'll, in the weirdest way, they'll talk about like my nephew who's like college age, and like he's a good kid, he doesn't drink, he doesn't cuss, he doesn't. And I'm like, first of all, you don't have the same conversations with that I do with him. He just doesn't cuss around you or whatever.
Right.
But I'm just like, what, again, like that's not like that's not my true north on my compass of morality,
Right.
and yeah. So anyway, for me, it was like, this is how stifled and repressed it was, that like when I first started creating this artwork, and people would be like, oh, I want to see some of your art. And I'd be like, okay. I was like, oh, it has a cuss word. Are you okay with that? And like everyone like across the board was like, yeah, bring it on. I love it. I've never had anyone say like, oh no, it offends me. So yeah, I think it was just so stifling to me that I was even afraid to like share it. My aunt did see it. I remember I was showing her some stuff on my phone because she used to do paper quilling, and I swiped to that and was like, oh no. And she is like the same level of I would say like holding those Christian standards and all of that, but she can be like a little bit more liberal, but liberal's not even the word, accepting, I guess.
Yeah.
I was surprised though, because I was like, oh gosh, she saw this, and I was like mortified. And she was like, well, let me see it. And she wanted to at least like appreciate the paper quilling of it, because she used to do paper quilling and she's very crafty. So I was like, well, this is shocking that she like is
That's
even
funny.
being moderately accepting of this.
Yeah. No, I thought about starting like a second podcast and having it involve the F word. I was going to say fuck exclusion, like with
Mm-hmm.
all of this stuff is going on. Like it's just my pet peeve when people exclude women or somebody for the race that they are, or just, I don't know, it just like irks me. Or like even like bullying, like that stuff
Mm-hmm.
just has always been like my hot button. But
Yeah.
yes, my mom was like, just don't say the F word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
um Sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
So what was it like getting out of that situation? Was that hard for you, kind of moving away from where you felt so suffocated and making a transition? Like, did you feel guilty at all, or was it just freeing?
Um, I mean, so when I first moved away, it was to college, and that wasn't, um, that's just kind of the thing you did. And then, I spent about 4 years traveling, and I think that travels, were a really big part of kind of that personal growth for me too, of like really stepping outside of what I understood to be right and true. And even like, especially in Uganda, they have a lot of very different rules there. Like it's very rude to eat while standing, for example. And as an
Hmm.
American, that was very difficult to adjust to. And and then even when you sat, there was a proper way to sit. And like some of that was frustrating at times, but just to like question every little thing that you do and like step outside of what you've been raised with, I think was a big part of that for me. But I don't know. And then there was a lot of differentiation with my family around politics that I didn't really realize was there until the 2016 election. Um, so that was like another big divide, I think, for my family. And well, by my family, I mean like myself on one side of the cliff and like my entire family on the other side. So I don't know, at
Hmm.
some point I was like, I don't know where I became this like liberal black sheep of the family who believes that putting children in cages is wrong. And like, I thought this is not what I was raised with. And not to go too political here. Everything's political though. It's hard to stay away from it. Anyway, it was so like that was just like another divide. And it's like they're just like over time, like I say, there wasn't like a breaking point. There were several things over time. So for me, it was like traveling, and then like politics, and then in the last year, as I started to really embrace the very specific, like more edgy things and more empowering messages around my artwork, that was kind of another divide I felt like. And I did struggle with it because, like, I don't know, you talk about, was there like guilt or what? Because for a long time I was like, how do I, okay, if I'm like now going to start putting this stuff out into the world, and if I'm going to talk about, like on my podcast, for example, about how the artwork that I create comes from my unmet childhood needs, and then like how am I going to deal with like my parents, who I don't know if they really listen to podcasts, but they have iPhones and they can figure it out. And if they listen to that, I was like, how do I deal with this like nuance of putting this out in the world? And I tried to kind of open a conversation with them around the directions that I was going with my business, and they didn't respond. I got stone cold silence from them for about a week. And so, okay, there's my answer. So I kind of just like instead went and like blocked them from my Facebook business page and things like that. Not my personal page, but I was like, they, you know, they can still interact with me in certain ways, but maybe I don't need them to be in every single corner of my life. And so, yeah, there was some differentiation that happened there. And, I don't know if guilt or shame is necessarily the word to use, but like, I think there's this, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? This like fear that's like, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. That's very ancestral, like in all of us, that, you know, if you, like historically, you know, if you differentiated from your family or whatever, and you were outside the tribe, that was like certain death. You know, it's like, we need the tribe for survival. So there's like, I feel like this constant juxtaposition and like polarity in me to still want to be a part of the tribe of my family, but like distance myself in a lot of other ways. So, but yeah, it's been a lot of like personal work too, around like moving away from trying to change their views and ideas on a lot of things, and just kind of looking at them and saying like, oh, well, of course they see the world that way because of their experiences and all of that, and just being very accepting of that, and like letting go of the need to change them, letting go of the need for their approval, letting go of the need for them to understand everything that I'm doing. And so for me to like fully kind of go in the direction that I'm going, I've had to just kind of shed those things. And it's not easy, and it's not like one and done work. It's continual work, but that's kind of the path that I'm on right now with them.
Yeah. Was it liberating though? Like after, like now doing your own thing and not feeling suffocated, is it liberating at all?
Yes, absolutely. And I would say like even every step along the way, traveling and just like, I'm really proud of the choices that I've made as an adult. And I think, yeah, all of it's been liberating. But yeah, I think the most liberating thing would be like shedding a need or a desire for approval and for following the path that someone else thinks that I should take.
Yeah.
When you let go of that, I think it's impossible to not be liberated, right?
Yes, totally. And like, it's like I think part of it is just we grow up looking to our parents or looking to adults, like we just think they're so awesome, and we just want to be like our parents, or, you know, do what they do. But then it's like at a certain point, you get a mind of your own, and you start to realize, oh, maybe it's not all as I thought. But it's still hard to detach from the things that you were raised with.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, I'm 34 right now. And I'm like, have I not figured some of these things out? And I've, you know, I've had several moments in my life, like even like right when I went away to college, there was a lot of differentiating of like, oh, I was raised with this, but I don't believe that anymore. And I've just had this, it feels like every 2 or 3 years of my adulthood, I have like another big awakening, it feels like. And I think I'm in the middle of another one.
I love it.
So it's not like I feel like I'm 34 and I'm just now going like, oh, maybe my parents didn't have it all figured out, and maybe they're flawed human beings too. You know, like I've certainly had those transformative moments for myself. But because it is like, life is a journey and you're just never done with this work, I think so it's perhaps that's the part that's surprising to me. It's like, oh, I thought I figured it all out when I was 22, and like, no, we're still working through stuff with my parents. Okay. And probably always will be. Okay.
Yes. And then just that myth as a kid, like your parents or adults have it all figured out. Like nobody has it all figured out ever.
Nope, they do not.
So Carolyn, let's end with a tip to encourage women who are in the arena fighting for the life that they want.
Yeah. I want to just say, just go for it. I don't know if that's like too vague of advice or a tip.
No, that's fine.
Just do it. Just go for it. You know, what's holding you back? What's holding you back? And can you shed that? Can you shed even a little bit of it? Can you make one small action towards the life that you want? You know, if there's something that you want, what's one thing you can do today to give yourself that permission to just go for it? Because if you don't, who else is going to do it for you? No one's going to live your life for you. So get out there and just do the thing.
So good. I love it. Oh, to beers, take action. And Carolyn, how can we connect with you? And can you share your podcast?
Absolutely. My podcast is Crafts with an Edge. And so it's all related to my business name, Edgecraft. Right now, my Instagram handle and website have ATX at the end of them, which stands for Austin, Texas, which will soon be changing because, oh my gosh, we didn't even get into this. My boyfriend and I bought a camper and we're going to be traveling the country full time. So working remotely. Yeah. Next episode or another time, we'll get into that. But
yes.
Anyway, my Instagram handle is Edgecraft ATX. And then my website as well is edgecraftatx.com.
Okay, awesome. I will put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on the show. You've been a total badass and I've enjoyed hearing your story.
Thanks, Marie.
And with that, we'll end our show. To all the badass women out there, stay in the arena, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, own it and get after it.
Now that you've listened to this episode of Ordinary to Badass, we want to hear from you. Go to our website, ordinarytobadass.com/podcast, and submit your own experience on how you took your life from ordinary to badass and get the chance to be on a future spotlight episode of the show. That's ordinarytobadass.com/podcast. While you're waiting for the next episode of the show, wipe off the sweat, dust off the dirt, and get back in the arena.